Deep within the dense, uncharted jungles, where sunlight struggles to pierce the canopy, lies a secret that has waited centuries to be uncovered. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient stone, and every step echoes with the weight of history. It's here, in this forgotten corner of the world, that a young archaeologist named Lyra finds herself standing before a hidden temple entrance. Its surface etched with cryptic symbols that seem to pulse with a life of their own. For Lyra, this isn't just another excavation. It's personal. Years ago, her father vanished while searching for this very temple, leaving behind only fragmented notes and a belief that the unseen empire, a civilization lost to time, holds the answers. Now, as she steps over the threshold, the air around her shifts, humming with an eerie resonance that sends a shiver down her spine. Whispers, faint and fragmented, brush against her ears, speaking in a language she can't quite understand, but feels deep in her bones. The temple itself seems alive, its walls breathing with a rhythm that matches her heartbeat. Shadows dance in the corners of her vision, and the symbols on the walls flicker as if responding to her presence. This is no ordinary ruin. It's a place where the past bleeds into the present, where every step could unravel a mystery or unleash a curse. Lyra knows the stakes: uncover the truth of the unseen empire, or risk becoming another victim of its lingering, malevolent force. What she doesn't yet realize is that the temple is more than a relic. It's a gateway to a story that has been waiting for her, a story that begins with whispers and ends with a truth so profound it could change everything we think we know about history, civilization, and the unseen forces that shape our world. The glow of her headlamp catches the symbols on the temple walls, and Lyra's breath quickens. Her fingers trace the intricate carvings, her mind racing to piece together their meaning. It's a language unlike anything she's encountered before, yet something about it feels familiar, like a half-remembered dream. Slowly, the symbols begin to align in her mind, forming a pattern. She steps back, her boots scraping against the stone floor, and gasps as the faint outline of a map emerges beneath her feet. It's not just a map, it's a guide, leading her deeper into the temple's heart. The etchings point to a series of chambers, each one marked with a symbol that seems to pulse faintly in the dim light. Lyra's pulse quickens as she realizes what this means. The trial's ancient tests, tied to the myths of the unseen empire, are real. They weren't just stories. Every step forward could bring her closer to the truth, or it could cost her everything. The whispers around her grow louder now, a cacophony of voices she can't quite place. Shadows flicker at the edges of her vision, always just out of reach, as if the temple itself is testing her resolve. She hesitates, her hand hovering over the radio at her belt. She could call for her team, retreat to the safety of the surface, and return with reinforcements. But something stops her. The air shifts, and the whispers seem to coil around her, urging her forward. The temple feels alive, and she knows its secrets won't wait. If she leaves now, the trail might vanish forever. Her father's face flashes in her mind, his voice echoing in her memory. Some truths are worth the risk. With a deep breath, Lyra steps into the first trial chamber. The moment she crosses the threshold, the temperature drops, sending a chill through her bones. The whispers turn sharper, more insistent, almost like warnings. The chamber is vast, its walls lined with more symbols, but these are different, darker, more jagged. A faint glow emanates from the center of the room, drawing her in. As she approaches, the air grows heavier, and the whispers swell into a chorus of voices, each one echoing a different warning. But Lyra doesn't stop. She can't. The answers she seeks are here, waiting for her, and the temple is daring her to find them. The chamber is unnervingly still as Lyra steps forward, her footsteps echoing faintly against the polished stone floor. Before her, the walls shimmer, transforming into a maze of mirrors that stretch endlessly in every direction. Each surface reflects her image, but not as she knows it. These reflections are warped, twisted versions of herself that seem to mock her with every flicker of movement. One reflection sneers, her face contorted with the weight of her father's disappearance. Another stares back, hollow-eyed, embodying the failures she's carried like a shadow. The third shows her alone, isolated, a figure swallowed by the vast emptiness of her own doubts. Lyra's breath catches in her throat. The labyrinth isn't just a physical challenge, it's a mirror of her soul, forcing her to face the fears she's buried deep. The whispers that have haunted her since she entered the temple now seem to coil around her, amplifying the voices in her mind. "You'll never find him," one reflection hisses. "You're not strong enough," another taunts. The air feels heavier, pressing against her chest as she struggles to steady herself. But Lyra knows she can't turn back. The trial is designed to break her, but it's also a test, one she must pass to move forward. She takes a step, then another, her eyes locked on the reflections that seem to close in around her. The path ahead is unclear, the mirrors distorting her sense of direction. She reaches out, her fingers brushing against the cool surface of one mirror, and for a moment, she feels the weight of her father's absence like a physical ache. Then something shifts. Anger flares within her, sharp and sudden. She clenches her fist and strikes the mirror, the glass shattering with a deafening crack. A shard cuts her hand, the sting of pain grounding her in the moment. As blood drips onto the floor, the labyrinth begins to change. The mirrors ripple like water, their surfaces dissolving to reveal a narrow passageway leading deeper into the temple. The whispers, once fragmented and indistinct, now form words that echo clearly in her mind. Only through the pain of truth can the path be revealed. They chant, their voices both haunting and oddly comforting. Lyra presses a hand to her wound, the sting a reminder of the cost of moving forward. She steps into the newly revealed passage, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. The trial has tested her, but it hasn't broken her, and as the whispers grow louder, she knows the next challenge awaits, one that will demand even more of her courage and strength. The passage narrows as Lyra steps into the second chamber, her headlamp casting long shadows across the walls. The air here feels different, heavier, charged with an energy that makes the hairs on her arms stand on end. She pauses, her breath shallow, as her light reveals a massive mural stretching from floor to ceiling. The artwork is breathtaking, its colors vibrant despite the centuries that have passed. Scenes of grandeur unfold before her eyes, towering cities, golden temples, and a people thriving under the rule of their immortal leaders. But as she moves closer, The mural begins to shift, the images flickering like a projection brought to life. She watches, transfixed, as the story plays out before her. The rulers of the unseen empire, adorned in regal robes, stand before a shadowy figure cloaked in darkness. The entity offers them a bargain immortality in exchange for their loyalty. The rulers, blinded by their desire for eternal life, agree without hesitation. The mural shifts again, showing the moment of betrayal. The shadowy figure consumes their souls, leaving their bodies hollow and the empire in ruins. The once glorious cities crumble, the temples fall, and the people are left to wander, lost and forgotten. The mural ends with a haunting image of the rulers, their faces twisted in eternal anguish, bound to the very walls of the temple. Lyra's heart pounds as the realization hits her, the whispers she's been hearing. Those fragmented, pleading voices are the rulers themselves, trapped and desperate for release. They've been calling to her, not to harm her, but to beg for her help. The weight of their suffering presses against her chest, and for a moment, she feels it too. The endless torment of souls bound to a curse they never fully understood. But there's something else. The mural isn't just a record of history, it's a warning. The curse that consumed the rulers still lingers, its dark energy woven into the very fabric of the temple. If left unchecked, it could spread, consuming anyone who dares to uncover its secrets. Lyra's mind races. She could destroy the mural, shattering the curse and sealing the ruler's fate forever. Or she could try to free them, risking her own safety in the process. The whispers grow louder now, a chorus of voices pleading for mercy. Release us, they beg, their words echoing in her mind. Lyra hesitates, her hand trembling as she reaches for her toolkit. Her father's words come back to her. Some truths are worth the risk. She knows what she has to do. With a steadying breath, she pulls out a chisel and begins to etch a symbol into the mural, a counter symbol, one she's seen in her father's notes. It's a gamble, but it's the only way to break the curse without destroying the mural entirely. As the symbol takes shape, the whispers grow quieter, their desperation fading into a soft, almost grateful hum. The air around her lightens, the oppressive energy lifting as the curse weakens. But the silence doesn't last. The moment the symbol is complete, a low rumble shakes the chamber, and the mural begins to crack. The rulers' faces, once frozen in agony, seem to soften, their expressions shifting to something resembling peace. The whispers fade entirely, leaving Lyra standing in a stillness that feels almost sacred. She steps back, her hands trembling, and watches as the mural crumbles, its pieces falling to the floor like ashes. The curse is broken, but the cost is clear. The rulers are gone, their voices silenced, but their story remains a warning etched into the ruins of the unseen empire. Lyra knows she's closer to the truth now, but the temple isn't done with her yet. The next trial awaits, and with it, a choice that will test her in ways she can't yet imagine. The air grows colder as Lyra steps into the third chamber, her head lump barely piercing the oppressive darkness. The space is vast, its high ceiling lost to shadows, and the walls lined with towering statues of the empire's rulers. Their stone faces are frozen in expressions of grim authority, their eyes hollow and lifeless until they aren't. As her light sweeps across the room, the statues begin to shift, their heads turning with a low, grinding sound that sends a chill down her spine. One by one, their eyes ignite with an eerie, malevolent glow, fixing her with a gaze that feels almost alive. A deep, resonant voice fills the chamber, emanating from the statues themselves. "Prove your worth," it commands, the words reverberating through the stone floor and into her very bones. The air grows heavier, pressing against her chest as the statues lean forward, their stone hands reaching out as if to seize her. Lyra's breath quickens, but she forces herself to stand her ground. This isn't just a test of knowledge, it's a test of courage. The voice speaks again, this time in the form of a riddle. "I am the shadow that devours kings, the whisper that binds the eternal. I am the price of immortality, the curse of the unseen. Speak my name, and the path shall open. Fail and join the stone." The words hang in the air, heavy with menace. Lyra's mind races, piecing together the fragments of knowledge she's gathered. The mural in the previous chamber, the whispers in her ears, the symbols etched into the walls, they all point to one truth. The shadowy entity that cursed the rulers wasn't just a force of destruction. It was a being with a name that holds power. She closes her eyes, letting the whispers guide her. They're faint now, barely audible, but they carry a clue. The name isn't something she can read or see. It's something she must feel, something tied to the Empire's downfall. It comes to her in fragments, like shards of a broken mirror, reflecting a forgotten image. She speaks it aloud, her voice trembling but clear. The moment the name leaves her lips, the statues freeze, their glowing eyes dimming. Then, with a deafening crack, they begin to crumble, their stone forms collapsing into dust. But the victory is short-lived. As the dust settles, the air grows colder still, and a presence begins to take shape at the far end of the chamber. A shadowy figure emerges, its form shifting and indistinct, yet radiating a palpable sense of menace. It doesn't speak, but its intent is clear. It's been waiting for her, and now it's here. Lyra's heart pounds as she takes a step back, her mind racing. The entity isn't just a part of the temple's trials. It's the source of the curse, the force that destroyed the Empire. And it's not done with her yet. The shadow begins to move, gliding toward her with an unnatural grace. Lyra knows she can't run, not here. The temple is its domain, and escape isn't an option. She'll have to face it, but how? The answer lies in the name she just spoke, the name that holds power over the entity, but using it comes with a risk, one she may not be ready to take. As the shadow draws closer, Lyra's resolve hardens. She's come too far to turn back now. The truth of the unseen empire, the fate of her father, the whispers of the rulers, they're all tied to this moment. The temple has tested her, but the final trial is yet to come. And as the shadow looms before her, she knows one thing for certain. The answers she seeks are within reach, but they'll come at a cost. The chamber Lyra enters next is unlike any she's encountered before. The air is thick with the scent of ancient dust and the faint metallic tang of gold. Her headlamp sweeps across the room, illuminating relics that glimmer in the dim light, golden artifacts, adorned with intricate carvings, scrolls bound in faded leather, and at the center, a massive throne carved from black stone, its surface etched with symbols that seem to writhe like living things. The relics are breathtaking, a testament to the Empire's forgotten glory, but beneath their beauty lies a palpable sense of unease, as if the room itself is holding its breath, waiting for her next move. The shadowy figure materializes once more, its form shifting and undulating like smoke. This time, it doesn't attack. Instead, it speaks, its voice a low, resonant hum that vibrates through the chamber. "You have come far, seeker of truth," it says, the words dripping with an eerie calm. "But the path ahead demands a choice. Take the throne, and the power of the unseen empire will be yours. Rule its remnants, command its secrets, and uncover the truth you seek. Refuse and face my wrath." Lyra's breath catches. The offer is intoxicating. With the throne, she could wield the Empire's power, unlock its mysteries, and finally discover what happened to her father. The possibilities flood her mind: knowledge, control, answers. But beneath the temptation lies a darker truth. The Empire fell for a reason. Its rulers were consumed by their own greed, their souls bound to a curse that still lingers. To take the throne would be to step into their shoes, to risk becoming what they were. Her hands tremble as she steps closer to the throne, her reflection distorted in its polished surface. The whispers return, louder now, a cacophony of voices urging her to sit, to claim her destiny. But one voice cuts through the noise: her father's. "Some truths are worth the risk," he'd said, "but not at the cost of your soul." Lyra's resolve hardens. She turns to the shadowy figure, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her chest. "I won't become what you are," she says. "I won't trade my humanity for power." The figure's form shifts, its edges sharpening as if in anger. "Then you will perish," it growls, its voice echoing like thunder. Lyra doesn't hesitate. She grabs a golden relic from the floor, its weight heavy in her hands, and hurls it at the throne. The impact is deafening, the black stone shattering into fragments that scatter across the room. The chamber trembles, cracks spider, webbing across the walls as the ceiling begins to collapse. Dust and debris rain down as Lyra sprints toward the exit, her heart pounding in her ears. Behind her, the shadowy figure's voice echoes, a promise laced with menace. "You cannot escape me, seeker. The Empire's curse follows all who disturb its slumber." Lyra barely makes it out, the entrance collapsing just as she stumbles into the passage beyond. She collapses to her knees, gasping for air, her hands trembling as she clutches the relic she used to shatter the throne. The chamber is gone, but the shadow's threat lingers, a weight pressing against her chest. She knows the temple isn't done with her. The trials have tested her resolve, but the final challenge, the truth of her father's fate, awaits. And with every step, the shadow grows closer, its presence a constant reminder that some secrets come with a price too steep to pay. The air grows damp and heavy as Lyra stumbles into the next chamber, her boots splashing in shallow water that pools at the entrance. The sound of rushing water echoes through the cavernous space, and her headlamp reveals a subterranean river cutting through the heart of the temple. Its surface glistens like liquid silver, but the water is unnaturally cold, its icy tendrils creeping up her legs as she wades in. The river seems alive, its currents swirling with a strange, deliberate energy. As she steps closer, spectral figures begin to rise from the depths, their forms translucent and shimmering like mist. Their faces are hollow, their eyes vacant, but their outstretched hands reach for her with a desperate, almost mournful urgency. Lyra freezes, her breath catching in her throat. The figures don't speak, but their movements speak volumes. They are not here to harm her, not exactly. They are trapped, bound to the river by the same curse that haunts the temple. Her gaze falls on a crumbling stone bridge that spans the river, its surface slick with moss and water. It's her only way forward, but it's far from safe. The bridge creaks under her weight as she steps onto it, each stone groaning in protest. The spectral figures drift closer, their hands brushing against her as if testing her resolve. She quickens her pace, her heart pounding as the bridge begins to give way beneath her. Halfway across, the stones collapse, sending her plummeting into the icy river. The shock of the cold steals her breath, and for a moment, she's disoriented, the current pulling her deeper. The spectral figures close in, their hands grasping at her clothes, her hair, her limbs. Their touch is freezing, sapping her strength as they drag her toward the riverbed. Panic surges through her, but then her hand brushes against the relic she took from the throne chamber. Clutching it tightly, she thrusts it into the water, its golden surface glowing with a faint, otherworldly light. The spectral figures recoil, their forms dissolving into mist as the relic's power pushes them back. Lyra kicks toward the surface, her lungs burning, and breaks through with a gasp. The figures linger at the edges of the river, their hollow eyes watching as she struggles toward the far bank. Exhausted and shivering, she drags herself onto solid ground, her clothes soaked and her hands trembling. The relic glows faintly in her grip, its warmth a small comfort against the chill that clings to her. The river's whispers fade behind her, but the temple's heart lies ahead, its presence looming like a shadow in the distance. She knows this is it, the final stretch, the place where all the threads of her journey converge. But the temple isn't done with her yet. The spectral figures, the relic, the river, they are all pieces of a puzzle she's only beginning to understand. And as she rises to her feet, her resolve hardens. The answers she seeks are close, but the cost of uncovering them may be more than she's ready to pay. The chamber ahead is unlike anything Lyra has ever seen. The air hums with a low, resonant energy, and the walls shimmer with an otherworldly glow. At the center of the room rises a massive crystal, its surface pulsating with light that shifts between deep blues and fiery reds. The crystal towers over her, its facets reflecting the faintest traces of movement, as if it's alive. The ground beneath her feet vibrates, and the whispers that have followed her through the temple now swell into a deafening chorus. This is the heart of the temple, the source of its power and its curse. As she steps closer, the shadowy figure materializes once more, its form coalescing from the darkness like smoke. This time, it doesn't loom or threaten. It stands before the crystal, its presence radiating a chilling calm. "You have come far, seeker," it says, its voice echoing with a weight that makes the air itself tremble. But now you must choose. Destroy the crystal, and the cursed souls bound to it will be freed. The Empire's legacy will end, and its secrets will be lost forever. Or take its power, rewrite history, become the ruler of what was and what could be. Lyra's breath catches. The offer hangs in the air, heavy with temptation. The crystal's energy pulses in time with her heartbeat, its light casting shifting shadows across the walls. She can feel its power, ancient and immense, calling to her. With it, she could uncover every secret of the unseen empire, undo its tragedies, and perhaps even bring her father back. The thought is intoxicating, but it comes with a price, one she can't yet fully grasp. Before she can respond, a faint light flickers at the edge of her vision. She turns, her heart leaping into her throat as a spectral figure steps forward. It's her father. His form is translucent, his features softened by the glow of the crystal, but his eyes are as clear and piercing as she remembers. "Lyra," he says, his voice gentle yet urgent. "Destroy it, please, this power, it's not worth the cost." Her hands tremble as she looks between the crystal and her father's spectral form. The shadowy figure watches in silence, its expression unreadable. The weight of the choice presses down on her, each option pulling at her in opposite directions. On one hand, the chance to rewrite history, to undo the empire's fall, and to bring her father back to life. On the other, the knowledge that such power comes at a cost, one that could trap her in the same cycle of destruction that consumed the empire's rulers. The crystal's glow intensifies, its light flickering faster, as if sensing her indecision. The whispers grow louder, the voices of the cursed souls pleading for release. Her father's spectral figure steps closer, his hand reaching out as if to touch her shoulder. "You've always been strong, Lyra," he says, "stronger than you know." But strength isn't about power, it's about knowing when to let go. Tears blur her vision as she looks at the crystal, its surface reflecting her own face back at her. She sees the fear, the doubt, the longing, but beneath it all, she sees something else: resolve. The temple has tested her at every turn, but this is the final trial. Not of courage or knowledge, but of choice. And as the crystal's light pulses in time with her heartbeat, she knows what she has to do, but the shadowy figure isn't finished. "Think carefully," it warns, its voice low and menacing. "The path you choose will define not just your fate, but the fate of all who come after. The Empire's curse is a burden, but its power could be a gift. Choose wisely, seeker." Lyra's grip tightens on the relic in her hand, its faint warmth a reminder of the journey that brought her here. The temple's secrets, her father's disappearance, the whispers of the cursed, they all lead to this moment. And as the crystal's light flares brighter, she takes a deep breath, her decision crystallizing in her mind. The shadowy figure watches, its form shifting in anticipation, as Lyra steps forward, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. The next moments will change everything, but for now, the choice hangs in the balance, a single heartbeat away from being made. Lyra's hands tighten around the relic, her heart pounding as the crystal's light pulses faster, almost like a heartbeat. The shadowy figure looms closer, its form flickering with malice, its voice a low growl. "Choose," it demands, the word reverberating through the chamber. But Lyra has already made her decision. With a cry of determination, she raises the relic high and brings it down with all her strength, striking the crystal at its core. The impact sends a shockwave through the chamber, and for a moment, everything goes silent. Then, the crystal shatters, its fragments exploding outward in a blinding burst of light. The chamber is engulfed in a radiant glow, and the whispers that have haunted Lyra since she entered the temple rise to a deafening crescendo. The shadowy figure lets out a piercing scream, its form dissolving into smoke as the light consumes it. The cursed souls trapped within the crystal are released, their spectral forms rising like wisps of smoke, their hollow eyes filled with relief. Among them, Lyra sees her father. His figure is faint, translucent, but his face is unmistakable. He steps forward, his expression a mix of pride and sorrow. "You did it," he says, his voice soft but filled with warmth. "You broke the curse." Tears stream down Lyra's face as she reaches out to him, but her hand passes through his spectral form. He smiles, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "It's time for me to go," he says, "but know this, you've given me peace." Before she can respond, his form begins to fade, dissolving into the light like the others. The chamber shakes violently, the walls cracking as the temple begins to collapse. Lyra turns and sprints toward the entrance, her boots slipping on the uneven stone floor. Behind her, the shadowy figure reforms briefly, its form writhing in rage as the temple crumbles around it. "You cannot escape me," it howls, its voice echoing with fury. Debris rains down as Lyra races through the collapsing corridors, dodging falling stones and crumbling pillars. The shadowy figure's attacks grow more desperate, its tendrils lashing out at her, but she ducks and weaves, her focus razor sharp. The entrance looms ahead, sunlight streaming through the cracks in the stone. She leaps through the doorway just as the temple collapses behind her, the ground shaking violently as the structure is swallowed by the earth. The jungle falls silent, the only sound the rustling of leaves in the wind. Lyra collapses to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The weight of the temple's curse is gone, replaced by a profound sense of closure. The whispers have faded, the shadowy figure sealed within the ruins, and her father's spirit finally at peace. She looks down at the relic in her hand, its light now dimmed, a reminder of the journey that brought her here. As she rises to her feet, the jungle seems to breathe with her, the air lighter, the shadows less oppressive. The unseen empire's secrets are buried once more, its legacy a story of both triumph and tragedy. Lyra takes one last look at the ruins, now little more than a pile of rubble, and turns toward the path that will lead her home. The temple's trials are over, but the lessons she's learned, and the truth she's uncovered, will stay with her forever. The jungle stirs faintly, as if acknowledging her presence one last time before falling still. Lyra walks away, her steps steady, her heart lighter. The unseen empire may be lost to time, but its story, and her part in it, will endure. The jungle feels different as Lyra makes her way back to camp, the weight of the temple's secrets still pressing on her shoulders. The air is thick with the scent of damp leaves and the faint hum of insects, but there's an undercurrent of tension, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. Her team is gathered around the campfire, their faces lighting up with relief as they spot her emerging from the trees. But their relief quickly turns to shock as they take in her disheveled appearance, her clothes torn, her face smeared with dirt, and her eyes hollow with exhaustion. Lyra, one of her teammates, exclaims, rushing to her side. "What happened? We were about to send a search party." She waves them off, her voice steady but tinged with weariness. "I found it," she says, her words cutting through the stillness of the jungle night. The The temple, the unseen empire, it's real. Her team falls silent, their curiosity piqued as she begins to recount her journey, her voice low and measured. She tells them of the trials, the cursed rulers, the shadowy entity, and the crystal at the heart of it all. But as she speaks, her gaze keeps drifting to the relics she brought back, their golden surfaces gleaming faintly in the firelight. The team leans in, their excitement palpable as they examine the artifacts. This could change everything, one of them murmurs, holding up a golden amulet etched with cryptic symbols. The unseen empire, its technology, its culture. We could rewrite history with these. Lyra nods, but her unease grows as she notices something strange. The relics, once inert, now emit a faint, pulsating glow, as if responding to the energy of the temple's collapse. She tries to brush it off, but the feeling lingers, a prickling sensation at the back of her neck, like the jungle itself is watching her. As the team begins to debate their next steps, Lyra's unease turns to dread. She steps forward, her voice cutting through the chatter. "We need to destroy them," she says, her tone firm. These relics, they're not just artifacts. They're tied to the curse. If we keep them, we risk unleashing something we can't control. Her team stares at her, their expressions a mix of disbelief and frustration. "Destroy them," one of them protests. "Lyra, this is the find of a lifetime. These relics could revolutionize archaeology. Think of what we could learn." The argument grows heated, the team split between Lyra's caution and their own ambition. She tries to make them understand, to explain the weight of what she saw in the temple, but the relic's glow grows brighter, their energy almost palpable. The jungle seems to close in around them, the shadows deepening as the firelight flickers. Lyra feels it then, a presence, faint but unmistakable, like the shadowy figure from the temple is still with her, its influence seeping into the camp. She looks around, her heart racing, and realizes the truth. The curse isn't confined to the temple. It's here, clinging to the relics, waiting for a chance to spread. Her team's excitement blinds them to the danger, but Lyra knows better. She knows what's at stake. As the debate rages on, she makes a silent vow. If her team won't listen, she'll find another way. The relics must be destroyed, no matter the cost. The unseen empire's secrets are too dangerous to be uncovered, and its curse too powerful to be ignored. The night stretches on, the jungle alive with whispers that only Lyra seems to hear. The relics glow brighter, their light casting long shadows across the camp, and she feels the weight of the empire's legacy pressing down on her once more. The battle isn't over, it's only just begun. The night is heavy with tension as Lyra slips away from the camp, a bundle of relics clutched tightly to her chest. The jungle hums with life around her, but its sounds feel distant, muted, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. Her mind races, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and determination. The relics pulse faintly in her arms, their glow casting eerie shadows on the path ahead. She knows she doesn't have much time. The team's excitement has blinded them to the danger, and if she waits too long, the curse will spread. The river is close, its faint murmur growing louder as she approaches. The water glistens under the moonlight, its surface calm and inviting, but Lyra feels no peace here. She kneels at the riverbank, her hands trembling as she unwraps the relics one by one. Their golden surfaces gleam in the pale light, the symbols etched into them seeming to shift and writhe like living things. She hesitates for only a moment before tossing the first relic into the water. The moment it hits the surface, the river changes. The water churns violently, its once clear depths turning a sickly black. A low, guttural hiss fills the air, and the temperature drops sharply. Lyra's breath comes out in visible puffs as she throws the second relic in, then the third. With each one, the water grows darker, the hiss louder, until it feels like the river itself is screaming. And then, the voice comes a low, resonant growl that seems to emanate from the depths of the water. "You think you've won," it says, each word dripping with malice. "But I am not so easily undone." Lyra staggers back, her heart pounding as the shadowy figure's presence presses against her mind. Its voice echoes in her thoughts, a relentless whisper that fills her with dread. "You cannot escape me, Seeker. The curse lives on, and so do I." The water stills suddenly, the blackness fading as if it were never there. But the voice lingers, a cold weight in the back of her mind. Lyra knows now that the shadowy figure isn't fully bound. The relics may be gone, but the curse remains, tied to something deeper, something more ancient. She crouches by the river, her hands shaking as she clutches her head. The realization hits her like a blow. This isn't over, not yet. Back at camp, the tension is palpable. Her team watches her with narrowed eyes, their suspicion growing with each passing hour. "Where were you?" One of them asks, his tone sharp. Lyra forces a calm smile, brushing off their questions with vague answers. But their distrust is clear, their whispers carrying through the camp like a second shadow. She can feel their eyes on her, their curiosity turning to unease. Alone in her tent, Lyra pulls out her father's notes, her fingers tracing the familiar scrawl. The pages are filled with sketches of symbols, descriptions of rituals, and fragments of a language long forgotten. She pores over them, her mind racing as she searches for answers. There has to be a way to destroy the shadowy figure permanently, to sever its connection to the curse once and for all. But the deeper she digs, the more she realizes how little she truly knows. The unseen empire's secrets are vast, and time is running out. Her team's whispers grow louder, their distrust turning to outright confrontation. "You're hiding something," one of them accuses, his voice cutting through the quiet of the camp. Lyra meets his gaze, her expression calm, but her heart pounding. She knows she can't tell them the truth, not yet. They wouldn't understand. But with every passing moment, the rift between them grows wider, and the shadowy figure's voice grows stronger in her mind. The jungle presses in around her, its shadows deepening as the night stretches on. Lyra clenches her fists, her resolve hardening. She won't let the curse consume her or her team. But the path ahead is uncertain, and the shadowy figure's promise of revenge hangs over her like a storm cloud. The relics may be gone, but the battle is far from over. And as she stares into the firelight, Lyra knows one thing for certain. The final confrontation is coming, and this time, she'll be ready. The firelight flickers as Lyra flips through her father's notes, her eyes scanning the pages with a mix of desperation and determination. The symbols and sketches blur together, but one page catches her attention, a fragment of text, almost illegible, scribbled in the margins. Her breath hitches as she reads it. The words describe a ritual, one that could banish the shadowy entity for good. But there's a catch. The ritual demands a sacrifice, a piece of her soul. Her hands tremble as she sets the notes down, the weight of the revelation pressing heavily on her chest. The idea of giving up a part of herself is terrifying, but the alternative is unthinkable. The entity's voice echoes in her mind, its whispers growing louder, more insistent. "You cannot escape me," it taunts, its words laced with venom. Lyra knows the threat is real. The curse is spreading, its influence seeping into her team, her thoughts, her very being. Before she can process the enormity of the decision, the tent flap rustles, and her team steps inside. Their faces are a mix of anger and concern, their distrust palpable. "We need answers," one of them says, his voice sharp. "You've been hiding something, and it's putting all of us at risk." Lyra looks up, her expression resolute. She knows she can't keep the truth from them any longer. Taking a deep breath, she begins to explain. She tells them about the temple, the curse, and the shadowy entity that still haunts her. She describes the ritual and the sacrifice it demands, her voice steady but laced with emotion. The tent falls silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. For a moment, no one speaks. Then, one by one, the team reacts. Some members exchange uneasy glances, their faces pale with fear. "This is madness," one of them mutters, shaking his head. "I didn't sign up for this." Without another word, he turns and leaves the tent, others following close behind. The tension grows as the group fractures, their unity crumbling under the weight of the truth. But not everyone walks away. A few members step forward, their expressions determined. "If this ritual is the only way to stop this thing," one of them says, her voice firm, "then we're with you." Lyra's heart swells with gratitude, but the fear lingers. She knows the road ahead is perilous, and the cost of failure is too great to bear. As the remaining team members begin to prepare for the ritual, Lyra's mind races. The idea of sacrificing a piece of her soul is daunting, but the thought of the curse consuming her team, and possibly the world, is even worse. She glances at her father's notes one last time, her fingers brushing over the faded ink. The ritual is her only hope, but it's a gamble with stakes higher than she ever imagined. The night stretches on, the jungle alive with the sounds of rustling leaves and distant howls. Lyra sits by the fire, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and resolve. The entity's voice whispers in her ear, its tone mocking, but she pushes it aside. She's made her decision. The ritual will happen, and the curse will end no matter the cost. But as the first light of dawn breaks over the horizon, Lyra can't shake the feeling that the shadowy figure is watching, waiting, its presence, a constant reminder that the battle is far from over. The ritual is just the beginning, and the true test of her courage and sacrifice is yet to come. The jungle feels alive as Lyra and the few remaining members of her team press forward, their path illuminated by the faint glow of their headlamps. The air is thick with tension, the kind that makes every rustle of leaves and snap of a twig feel like a warning. The sacred site mentioned in her father's notes isn't far now, but the journey feels endless, each step weighed down by the growing presence of the shadowy entity. Its whispers have become a constant hum in the back of Lyra's mind, a relentless reminder of the danger they're walking into. As they approach the site, the ground beneath their feet begins to tremble. A low rumble building into a deafening roar. The trees shake violently, their branches clawing at the sky as if trying to escape. Lyra's heart pounds as she looks up, her breath catching in her throat. The sky, once clear, is now a swirling mass of dark clouds, lightning crackling through the air like the entity's laughter. "It's here," she says, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "It's trying to stop us." The team barely has time to react before the earth splits open, a jagged fissure tearing through the ground. One member, a young archaeologist named Elias, stumbles, his foot catching on the edge. Lyra lunges forward, grabbing his arm just as the ground gives way beneath him. She pulls him to safety, but not before a shard of rock slices through his leg, leaving a deep gash. He cries out in pain, his face pale as blood seeps through his pants. The team scrambles to tend to Elias's wound, their movements frantic as the storm rages around them. Lyra's hands shake as she presses a makeshift bandage to the injury, her mind racing with guilt. This is her fault. She brought them here, knowing the risks, and now someone she cares about is hurt. The weight of that guilt threatens to crush her, but she pushes it aside, forcing herself to focus. They don't have time for hesitation. As they move forward, the entity's presence grows stronger, its form beginning to manifest in the physical world. Shadows twist and coil, taking on a grotesque, almost human shape. Its eyes, if they can even be called, that glow with a malevolent light, fixing Lyra with a gaze that feels like ice spreading through her veins. "You cannot escape me," it hisses, its voice a guttural growl that reverberates through the air. The team freezes, their fear palpable, but Lyra realizes something in that moment, something crucial. The entity thrives on fear and doubt. It feeds on weakness, using it to grow stronger. She looks at Elias, his face etched with pain, and then at the others, their expressions a mix of terror and determination. She knows what she has to do. "Don't let it control you," she says, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "It wants us to be afraid. It wants us to doubt ourselves. But we're stronger than that. We have to be." Her words seem to cut through the fear, the team's resolve hardening as they nod in agreement. The entity lashes out, its shadowy tendrils striking at the group with terrifying speed. They dodge and weave, their movements fueled by adrenaline and sheer willpower. Lyra leads them forward, her focus unwavering as they push toward the sacred site. The storm intensifies, the wind howling like a vengeful spirit, but they press on, their determination a beacon in the darkness. When they finally reach the site, the air shifts, the oppressive weight of the entity's presence momentarily lifting. The sacred ground is marked by a circle of ancient stones, their surfaces etched with symbols that pulse faintly in the dim light. Lyra feels a surge of hope as she steps into the circle, the energy of the place wrapping around her like a protective shield. But the relief is short-lived. The entity roars in fury, its form twisting and writhing as it tries to break through the barrier. The storm outside the circle rages on, lightning striking the ground with deafening cracks. Elias collapses to his knees, his strength fading, and Lyra's guilt surges anew. She knows she can't afford to falter now. As the team prepares for the ritual, Lyra takes a deep breath, her resolve hardening. The entity may feed on fear and doubt, but it can't survive in the face of unwavering courage. And as she looks at her team, battered but unbroken. She knows they have that courage in spades. The final battle is coming, and they're ready to face it together, but the entity isn't done yet. Its voice echoes in her mind, a chilling reminder of the stakes. You will fail, it whispers, and when you do, I will consume everything. Lyra clenches her fists, her eyes narrowing as she meets the entity's gaze. Not today, she says, her voice firm. Not ever. The storm outside the circle rages on, but within the sacred site, a quiet strength grows, a strength born of unity, resolve, and the unshakable belief that even the darkest shadows can be banished by the light. The air inside the sacred circle hums with a low, resonant energy, the ancient stones pulsing faintly as if alive. Lyra kneels at the center, her hands trembling as she arranges the ritual components. A small obsidian blade, a vial of her own blood, and the golden relic she carried from the temple. The weight of what's to come presses heavily on her chest, but she forces herself to focus. This is the moment she's been preparing for, the moment her father's legacy and the fate of the unseen empire hinge upon. The entity doesn't wait. Its voice slithers into her mind, cold and mocking. You think this will work? It hisses, its tone dripping with disdain. You're just a child, playing with forces you can't comprehend. Lyra ignores it, her fingers steady as she traces the symbols from her father's notes onto the ground. But the entity isn't finished. A sudden wave of images crashes over her, visions so vivid they feel real. Her father, alive and smiling, reaching out to her. The empire in its golden age, its cities gleaming under a sunlit sky. Then the fall, the shadowy figure consuming the rulers, their faces twisted in agony as their souls are ripped away. The empire crumbles, its glory reduced to ash and ruin. The visions are a gut punch, each one designed to break her resolve, to make her doubt. Lyra grits her teeth, her hands clenching into fists. You can't stop me, she mutters, her voice low but fierce. She forces the visions aside, her focus narrowing to the ritual. The first step is complete, the symbols are drawn. Now she must activate them. As she picks up the obsidian blade, the entity's laughter echoes in her ears, sharp and cruel. What will you sacrifice, little seeker? A piece of your soul, your humanity, and for what? A fleeting chance at victory. Its words sting, but Lyra doesn't flinch. She knows the cost. She's ready to pay it. The moment the blade pierces her palm, the circle ignites, the symbols glowing with a brilliant light. The air crackles with energy, the ground trembling beneath her feet. The entity roars in fury, its shadowy form surging forward, but it hits an invisible barrier at the edge of the circle. You cannot contain me, it shrieks, its voice a deafening bellow. Outside the circle, the storm intensifies. Lightning streaks across the sky, the wind howling like a vengeful spirit. The team stands their ground, their faces pale but determined. They've formed a protective ring around the sacred site, their makeshift weapons, flashlights, machetes, even rocks, clutched tightly in their hands. Elias, despite his injury, stands with them, his jaw clenched against the pain. The entity lashes out, its shadowy tendrils striking at the team with terrifying speed. One member, a young botanist named Priya, is knocked to the ground, her flashlight skittering out of reach. Another, a seasoned explorer named Marcus, swings his machete in a wide arc, slicing through a tendril. It recoils with a hiss, but more take its place. "Hold the line," Marcus shouts, his voice cutting through the chaos. The team rallies, their movements frantic but coordinated. They know what's at stake. If the entity breaks through, if it reaches Lyra, all is lost. Inside the circle, Lyra works quickly, her hands moving with practiced precision. She pours the vial of her blood into the center of the symbols, the liquid sizzling as it makes contact. The light grows brighter, the air hotter. The entity's attacks grow more desperate, its form writhing and twisting as it tries to break through, but Lyra doesn't falter. She recites the words from her father's notes, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. The ritual is working. She can feel it. The entity's power wavers, its form flickering like a dying flame. Then, with a deafening roar, the entity surges forward, its shadowy tendrils slamming into the barrier with enough force to shatter stone. The circle holds, but just barely. The team's shouts grow louder, their movements more frantic. They're running out of time. Lyra's voice rises, the words of the ritual echoing through the storm. The entity's form begins to unravel, its edges dissolving into smoke, but it isn't going quietly. You think you've won. It snarls, its voice a guttural growl. "I will return. I always return." The light of the circle flares one final time, a blinding burst of energy that forces everyone to shield their eyes. When it fades, the entity is gone, its presence no more than a faint whisper on the wind. The storm quiets, the jungle falling eerily still. Lyra collapses to her knees, her strength spent. The team rushes to her side, their faces a mix of relief and awe. But as Lyra looks at the now dormant circle, she knows this isn't over. The entity's threat lingers in her mind, a chilling reminder that some battles leave scars that never fully heal. The ritual worked for now, but the unseen empire's curse is ancient, and its shadow still looms. The team helps her to her feet, their hands steady despite their exhaustion. Together, they stand in the silence of the jungle, the weight of what they've accomplished, and what still lies ahead hanging heavy in the air. The journey isn't over. But for now, they've bought themselves a moment of peace, and in the face of such darkness, that's enough. The air inside the sacred circle grows still, the once pulsating symbols now dim and lifeless. Lyra kneels at the center, her breath ragged, her hands trembling as she clutches the obsidian blade. The ritual is complete. The entity is gone, banished to whatever dark corner of existence it came from. But the victory feels hollow. A cold, empty ache spreads through her chest, as if a part of her has been carved away. She looks down at her hands, expecting to see something missing, but they are whole. Yet she feels anything but. The team rushes to her side, their voices a blur of relief and concern. "Lyra, are you okay?" Elias asks, his face pale, but his eyes filled with worry. She tries to respond, but the words catch in her throat. How can she explain what she's lost? The entity is gone, but so is something vital within her. A piece of her soul, sacrificed to ensure its defeat. Before she can gather her thoughts, the ground beneath them begins to shake. The sacred stones groan, their ancient surfaces cracking under the strain. "We need to move," Marcus shouts, grabbing Lyra's arm and pulling her to her feet. The team scrambles, their movements frantic as the sacred site begins to collapse. Rocks tumble from above, the once stable ground, now a treacherous maze of fissures and falling debris. They sprint through the chaos, the jungle closing in around them as the sacred site crumbles. Lyra stumbles, her legs weak, but Marcus and Elias are there, supporting her as they push forward. The sound of collapsing stone echoes behind them, a grim reminder of what they've left behind. When they finally burst into the open, the jungle falls silent, the only sound their labored breathing. Lyra collapses to her knees, her body trembling with exhaustion. The void within her feels heavier now, a constant reminder of the cost of their victory. She looks back at the ruins, now little more than a pile of rubble, and feels a pang of sorrow. The sacred site, the remnants of the unseen empire, is gone, destroyed in the final moments of the ritual. The team gathers around her, their faces a mix of relief and unease. They've survived, but the toll is clear. Elias's leg is bandaged, his face pale from blood loss. Marcus's hands are raw and bruised, and the others bear their own scars, both physical and emotional. They exchange glances, the weight of what they've endured hanging heavy in the air. Lyra takes a deep breath, forcing herself to stand. Her legs feel unsteady, her body weakened, but her resolve remains unshaken. "We did it," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. The curse is broken. The team nods, their expressions softening, but the unspoken truth lingers. The cost was higher than any of them could have imagined. As they make their way back to camp, the jungle feels different, lighter, somehow, as if a great weight has been lifted. But for Lyra, the weight remains, a constant ache that no amount of rest can soothe. She knows she's changed, that the sacrifice she made will stay with her forever. Yet, as she looks at her team, battered but unbroken, she feels a flicker of hope. The road ahead won't be easy. Rebuilding her life, finding a way to fill the void within her, will take time, but she's faced the darkness and emerged stronger. The unseen empire's curse is gone, its secrets buried once more, and as the first light of dawn breaks over the horizon, Lyra takes a step forward, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. The journey isn't over, but for the first time in a long while, she feels ready to face it. The jungle stirs faintly, the wind carrying the faintest whisper, a farewell, perhaps, or a promise. Lyra doesn't look back. She knows the past is behind her, and the future, though uncertain, is hers to shape. And with each step, she feels the weight of the void within her grow just a little lighter. The journey back to civilization is a blur for Lyra. The jungle, once alive with whispers and shadows, now feels strangely quiet, as if holding its breath. When she and her team finally emerge into the bustling world of modern life, the contrast is jarring. Bright lights, the hum of traffic, and the chatter of people fill the air, a stark difference from the oppressive silence of the temple. News of their discovery spreads like wildfire, and Lyra is thrust into the spotlight, hailed as a hero for uncovering the secrets of the unseen empire. But the applause feels hollow, the accolades meaningless. As cameras flash and reporters clamor for her story, Lyra struggles to find the words. How can she explain what she's been through? The temple, the trials, the shadowy entity. It all feels like a distant dream, yet the weight of it clings to her, a constant reminder of the cost. The void within her, the piece of her soul she sacrificed, aches like a phantom limb. She smiles for the cameras, nods at the praise, but inside, she feels untethered, adrift in a world that no longer feels like her own. The entity's final words echo in her mind, a haunting refrain she can't escape. "I will return," it had said, its voice a chilling promise. She tries to shake the thought, to focus on the present, but the unease lingers. The rituals, the relics, the cursed rulers. It all feels too big, too dangerous, to be left in the past. She knows the unseen empire's secrets aren't truly buried. They're out there, waiting for someone else to uncover them, to repeat the same mistakes. It's this fear that drives her to write. Late at night, when the world is quiet and the weight of the void feels heaviest, she sits at her desk, pen in hand, and begins to pour her experiences onto paper. The words come slowly at first, then in a torrent: the trials, the sacrifices, the warnings she wishes she'd had. She writes not as a hero, but as someone who's seen the cost of ambition unchecked, the price of power unearned. Her team tries to pull her back into the world they once shared, inviting her to conferences and interviews, but Lyra finds herself increasingly drawn to solitude. The noise of civilization, once comforting, now feels overwhelming. She spends hours in quiet libraries, researching ancient texts and forgotten histories, searching for answers the modern world can't provide. The more she learns, the more she realizes how little she truly knows. The unseen empire's reach was vast, its influence far greater than anyone imagined. One evening, as she sits alone in her dimly lit study, she receives a letter. The envelope is plain, the handwriting unfamiliar. Inside is a single sheet of paper, its edges frayed with age. The message is brief, but its words send a chill down her spine. The shadows remember. The Empire's legacy is not yet done. Lyra's heart races as she reads the words again and again. She isn't sure who sent the letter or what it means, but one thing is clear: the fight isn't over. The entity's final threat wasn't idle. Its influence, its curse, lingers in the world, waiting for the right moment to resurface. She sets the letter aside, her mind racing. The world may see her as a hero, but she knows the truth. The battle against the unseen empire's darkness is far from finished. And as she picks up her pen once more, she realizes her work has only just begun. The void within her still aches, a constant reminder of what she's lost. But it's also a reminder of what she's fighting for: a world free from the shadows of the past. And as the first light of dawn filters through her window, Lyra knows one thing for certain: she won't stop until the Empire's secrets are truly laid to rest. Lyra's writings begin to circulate, their pages filled with vivid accounts of the unseen empire and the shadowy entity that once threatened to consume everything. The public is captivated by her story, drawn to the mystery and danger she describes, but not everyone is convinced. Scholars and archaeologists, some of whom she once admired, dismiss her work as fiction, an elaborate tale spun from an overactive imagination. A fascinating narrative, one critic writes, but lacking in credible evidence. The words sting, not because she doubts her own experiences, but because they highlight the gap between what she knows and what the world is willing to accept. The attention is overwhelming. Invitations to speak at conferences and universities, pile up on her desk, and reporters camp outside her home, eager for a glimpse of the woman who uncovered the Empire's secrets. But Lyra finds no comfort in the spotlight. The void within her, the piece of her soul sacrificed in the ritual, aches constantly, a reminder of the price she paid. And then there are the whispers, faint but unmistakable. The entity's voice, though distant, still lingers in her mind, a chilling echo of its presence. "You cannot escape me," it murmurs, its tone both mocking and menacing. She tries to ignore it, throwing herself into her research with renewed determination. Ancient texts and coded manuscripts fill her study, their pages a labyrinth of symbols and riddles. She spends hours deciphering them, searching for any clue that could lead her to a way to fully eradicate the entity's influence. But the deeper she delves, the more she realizes how little she truly understands. The unseen empire's reach was vast, its secrets buried in layers of myth and forgotten history. Her resolve hardens with each passing day. She knows the entity isn't truly gone. Its final words were a warning, not a farewell. And if it's still out there, waiting for an opportunity to return, then her work is far from finished. The scholars may dismiss her claims, but she can't afford to doubt herself. Too much is at stake. Late one night, as she pores over a crumbling text, she finds a passage that sends a shiver down her spine. It describes a ritual, one far older and more powerful than the one she performed in the jungle. The details are fragmented, the instructions incomplete, but the intent is clear. This ritual could banish the entity permanently. The cost, however, is even greater than before. She closes the book, her hands trembling, and stares into the darkness. The entity's voice whispers again, faint but insistent, and she knows what she must do. The road ahead is uncertain, fraught with danger and sacrifice, but Lyra has faced the darkness before, and she's not afraid to face it again. The world may dismiss her as a storyteller, but she knows the truth. The unseen empire's legacy is real, and its shadow still looms, and as long as she draws breath, she'll fight to ensure that its secrets and its curse never rise again. The whispers grow quieter, as if the entity senses her determination. For now, at least, she has a moment of peace, but the battle isn't over. It's only just begun. Lyra's study is a labyrinth of books, maps, and notes, each one a piece of the puzzle she's been tirelessly assembling. Late one night, as the glow of her desk lamp casts long shadows across the room, her fingers brush against a worn, leather-bound journal tucked beneath a stack of papers. The cover is unmarked, but the moment she opens it, she knows it's different. The pages are filled with unfamiliar handwriting, their edges brittle with age. Her breath catches as she flips through them, her eyes scanning the faded ink. It's a record not just of the unseen empire, but of something far older, something the empire itself feared. The journal speaks of a ritual, one that could restore what was lost, not just her soul fragment, but the balance the entity disrupted. The details are sparse, the instructions fragmented, but the implications are clear. This ritual could undo the sacrifice she made, reclaiming the piece of herself she thought was gone forever. But there's a catch. To complete it, she'll have to face the entity again, drawing it back into the physical world. The risk is enormous. If she fails, the entity could break free, its power unchecked. For days, she wrestles with the decision. The void within her is a constant ache, a reminder of what she's lost. But the thought of unleashing the entity again fills her with dread. She spends hours pacing her study, the journal open on her desk, its pages a silent plea for action. She thinks of her father, of the team who stood by her in the jungle, of the world that remains blissfully unaware of the darkness she fought to contain. The weight of responsibility presses heavily on her chest, but so does the longing to feel whole again. In the end, it's not just about her. The journal hints at something greater, a way to sever the entity's connection to the world entirely, ensuring it can never return. The opportunity is too significant to ignore. With a deep breath, she makes her choice. She'll perform the ritual, not just for herself, but for everyone the entity could threaten. The preparations are meticulous. She gathers the necessary components, each one a challenge to obtain. A shard of obsidian, carved with ancient symbols, a vial of water from a sacred spring, and a feather from a bird rarely seen outside of myth. The instructions warn of the dangers, of the entity's cunning, and its ability to manipulate fear. But Lyra has faced it before, and she's not afraid to face it again. As she sets the final piece in place, the air in her study grows heavy, the weight of what's to come settling around her like a shroud. She knows the ritual will be a battle, not just of strength, but of will. The entity will try to break her, to exploit her doubts and fears, but she's ready. She's survived its darkness once, and she'll do it again. The journal's final words echo in her mind as she begins the ritual. The path to restoration is fraught with peril, but the reward is worth the risk. Lyra closes her eyes, her heart steady despite the storm of emotions within her. The ritual is her last hope, not just to reclaim what she's lost, but to ensure the entity can never harm anyone again. As the first words of the incantation leave her lips, the room grows colder, the shadows deepening. The entity's presence is unmistakable, its voice a low, menacing growl that sends a shiver down her spine. But Lyra doesn't falter. Her voice grows stronger, the words of the ritual cutting through the darkness like a blade. The final confrontation has begun, and this time, she won't stop until the entity is gone for good. The air grows electric as Lyra steps into the astral plane, a realm where the boundaries between thought and reality blur. The landscape is a swirling tapestry of light and shadow, the ground shifting beneath her feet like water. The entity's presence is overwhelming here, its form towering over her, a mass of writhing darkness that seems to stretch infinitely in all directions. Its voice booms, a cacophony of whispers and roars that reverberate through the very fabric of the plane. You cannot win, it snarls, its tone dripping with malice. This is my domain, you are nothing here. But Lyra doesn't falter. She's spent months preparing for this moment, her mind and spirit fortified by the knowledge she's gathered. The journal, the ancient texts, the fragments of her father's research, they've all led her here. She knows the entity's weaknesses, the cracks in its armor forged by arrogance and greed. With a deep breath, she begins the ritual, her voice steady as she recites the incantation. The words are ancient, their power resonating through the astral plane like a shockwave. The entity attacks, its shadowy tendrils lashing out with terrifying speed. Lyra dodges and weaves, her movements fueled by instinct and adrenaline. The tendrils strike the ground where she stood moments before, the impact sending ripples through the astral plane. She can feel the entity's rage, its desperation, as it realizes she's not the same woman who faced it in the jungle. She's stronger now, wiser, her resolve unshakable. The ritual's light grows brighter, its energy coalescing into a radiant sphere that hovers above Lyra's outstretched hands. The entity recoils, its form flickering as the light pierces its darkness. "You cannot destroy me," it roars, its voice a guttural growl that shakes the plain. "I am eternal." Lyra's eyes narrow, her voice firm as she delivers the final words of the incantation. "You're wrong," she says, her tone calm but resolute. "Your eternity ends here." The sphere of light explodes, its radiant energy engulfing the entity. It screams, a sound that echoes through the astral plane like the shattering of glass. Its form unravels, the darkness dissolving into nothingness as the light consumes it. The plane trembles, the shifting landscape stabilizing as the entity's influence fades. For a moment, there's silence. Then, a warmth spreads through Lyra, a sensation she hasn't felt in months. The void within her, the piece of her soul she sacrificed, is restored. She feels whole again, her spirit mended by the ritual's power. The astral plane begins to dissolve around her, its purpose fulfilled. When she opens her eyes, she's back in her study, the worn journal lying open on her desk. The room is quiet, the air still, but the weight that once pressed on her chest is gone. She takes a deep breath, her hands steady as she closes the journal. The entity is gone, its curse lifted, and the unseen empire's legacy is finally at rest. The jungle remains silent, its secrets buried once more, but Lyra knows her journey isn't over. She picks up her pen and begins to write, her words flowing easily onto the page. The story of the unseen empire, of the shadowy entity, and the sacrifices made to defeat it, is one the world needs to hear, not as a tale of power, but as a warning, a reminder of the cost of unchecked ambition and the dangers of meddling with forces beyond understanding. As the first light of dawn filters through her window, Lyra feels a sense of peace she hasn't known in years. The battle is over, but her work has just begun. The world may never fully understand what she's been through, but she'll ensure the lessons of the unseen empire are never forgotten. And as she sets down her pen, she knows she's found not just closure, but a new purpose, one rooted in truth, wisdom, and the quiet strength of those who face the darkness and emerge unbroken.